Hi, I'm Jeff Murrow. I want to welcome you to True Texas History, where today we're going to revisit the Tampico Expedition, but this time I'm going to cover some of the behind-the-scenes events. Because the Tampico Expedition, number one, we were told by our Texas forebears to remember the Alamo, remember Goliad, and remember Tampico. So what is it about Tampico we're supposed to remember? What is the significance there? What happened? Well, I touched on it just a little bit the other day. Today I'm going to go into more detail. To go ahead and give you background, Jose Mejia, who was a Mexican military officer. Now, some accounts have him being born in Cuba, some in Mexico. So it's unclear where exactly he was born. We do know that he had at times run afoul of Santa Ana, and he was there in New Orleans recruiting for this expedition into Texas. And while he was in New Orleans, he hooked up with some of the lawyers and I suspect some bankers, and they created what is called the Committee on Texan Affairs. This is a mysterious committee that not a whole lot is known about. We do know that they were able to secure the financing and outfit the expedition of 150 men, or thereabouts. Now, after Mejia went ahead and recruited these men, there's some debate as to whether or not they knew that they were going to be in the service of Texas, and whether or not that they knew their involvement would involve military engagements. Now, although I have heard that mentioned, I also know that these men, they were equipped with leftover uniforms from the Battle of New Orleans that were blue in color. Hence, that's why, as a military unit, they were called the Tampico Blues. I find it ironic that even to this day, the local basketball team and soccer team in Tampico have as their colors the color blue. But the Tampico Blues, they had their uniforms. There was even a flag of the regiment that was taken on the expedition. Now, the people that were on the Committee of Texan Affairs, there were 8 members of the committee. The chairman of the committee denied any involvement or clandestine activities, and he denied it pretty profusely until the U.S. courts went ahead and charged him with violating neutrality laws. And they succeeded in having the charges stuck against him, but he never backed down from his story. So the committee still remains mysterious in terms of who they were and what they did. Now, with the volunteers that served in the expedition, many times it's said that they were all Americans. That is not true. It was a mixture of Americans, Germans, English, and French. There was a sizable portion of Frenchmen on the expedition. Actually, there were 47 French. So if you ever heard it said that, what does France have to do with Texas independence? Plenty. They did make an active contribution. Now, the men, they ran into a sandbar, had to get some help getting off the sandbar. Then early on the morning that they arrived, they went ahead and attacked the fort, succeeded in taking it over. They thought that the townspeople would rally to them. They didn't. Instead, they were protesting out in the streets saying, "Viva Santa Ana, death to the foreigners," which somebody put them up to it. And so they didn't receive a very warm welcome. Now, some of them ended up getting captured. Actually, about 30 of them got captured. The rest of the expedition escaped and returned back to Texas. And among them was Colonel Mejia. And Mejia did assist in the Texas Revolution. Now, ironically, with this expedition, he was there and he found himself against General Urrea in that engagement. It just so happens several years later, in 1839, the two of them, instead of opposing each other, would join forces once again at Tampico. Only at that time, it didn't turn out so well. Because after that uprising, Mejia was captured by Santa Anna. Now, with the first Tampico expedition, when Mejia escaped, Santa Anna was furious and flew into a rage and demanded that all the prisoners be shot. And some of the Americans in the town of Tampico and some of the prominent citizens begged and pleaded and even offered all kinds of ransom for the men, which were refused by Santa Anna and those under his command. They went ahead and executed the men on this day, December the 14th, 1835. That's why I'm doing the video today, because this was the day of their execution. Now, although they captured 30, like 3 of them died, so they ended up executing 27. That's still a lot of men to go ahead and be executed. But Santa Anna had this attitude that if there's any foreign fighters coming into Mexico, he would consider them pirates and give them a pirate's death, which meant death. Rather than hanging, he used the firing squad. Now, like I said, Mejia did manage to escape. He got on board an American schooner. Now, some of the American ships were offshore because after the failed attempt of Mejia and his men to go ahead and take the port, the local officials pronounced a blockade. They kept out all American vessels, all foreign vessels, including a supply ship that Mejia needed for his men. So he kind of ended up messing himself over. But he did get on the American schooner, get back to Texas, and live to fight another day. Now, though I mentioned Santa Anna going into a rage, there was no love lost between Mejia and Santa Anna. When Santa Anna did finally capture Mejia back in 1839 after that second expedition, he gave Mejia 3 hours to go ahead and write his wife and kids any letters before he was executed. Mejia had the attitude that if it had been the other way around, I would have only given you 3 minutes. So something about, Santa Anna didn't win friends and influence people. Now, one of the few members that we know about on this Committee of Texan Affairs was a fellow by the name of George Fisher. Now, George Fisher is an interesting character. He was originally born in Serbia. I mean, this is one of those things you think, okay, what does Serbia have to do with Texas? Well, George Fisher is part of it. George Fisher was very prominent in the founding of early Texas. In fact, he spoke 16 languages and was instrumental in a lot of the translations of from Spanish to English or to the other languages that people needed. And he was also later on a judge and a member of Congress. Made some mighty contributions and ended up eventually moving on out to California. I think it was during the time of the gold rush, and ended up dying out in California, but not before he gave his historic papers back to the state of Texas. I do not know what the Tampico Blues flag looked like. I do know that it did make it back to Texas. They did fly it over some of the camps as a reminder, but to my knowledge, it has since disappeared. So if I find out more about it, I'll pass that on. I have not seen anything in the historic documents other than mentioning that the flag existed. And I did find documentation about the source of the uniforms of the troops being surplus from the War of 1812. Some sources say that it was from Spanish sources. Those kind of sources are a little sketchy. But I want to go ahead and give you some background so that we can remember Tampico and the significance, because had Tampico succeeded, you would have been looking at an uprising there in Tampico and another one in Texas, and Santa Anna would have had to split his forces, thereby weakening his strength and giving the Texans more of a fighting chance. With the failure of the Tampico Expedition, he could, one, he was very angry, and number two, he could concentrate his forces and hit Texas with most of his might, which is what he ended up doing. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any comments, questions, feel free to leave them below. I'll be glad to get to them. So until next time, this is Jeff Murrah wishing you vaya con Dios, my friends. Goodbye.